hinges supplied by Fisher are stainless steel, 1.03mm thick rolled plate hinges. The sort of normal hinges we would expect to find on a lot of stuff. It's a standard method of making up a hinge, where the metal is rolled around the outside of a pin which slots in between. And their recommendation for fitment is that the hinge is peened to retain the pin. My experience of working with rolled hinges of this sort of thickness of material, which is 1.03mm of stainless steel, is not necessarily brilliant in that format, and my recommendation would be to actually just have the pin spot welded at one end to stop the pin from falling out or moving in and out on the hinge itself. So that's one format of hinge that could be used. The other format of hinge is like this, which is an extruded hinge. For me, I'm planning on using it aluminium alloy extruded hinge, and there is no rollover. It's all created in one piece. So with the tension in that direction, there's no chance of the metal from unrolling. Not that that would be the case, as I said, with the stainless steel, but in fact, because of the way it's created and the way the loads are put into it, this aluminium hinge has the same pull load strength as the stainless steel one does. There are possibly some drawbacks in that the hinge may not withstand wear to the same extent, but the thickness of the material around the pin, in the case of the aluminium alloy one, is greater than that on the steel one, and the thickness of the plate here is 0.25mm thicker, so there is a slight increase in thickness. Weight wise, well, we'll create a hinge and then we'll check it up against that of one of the original hinges. So there's a close-up shot of what this looks like, and then there are other forms of hinges which other aircraft use, where they don't actually have the pin peened in or locked in with a weld. They actually have a bigger diameter pin, which is either retained by having split pins top and bottom, or it's got a head on it and a split pin just going through at one end, which is quite standard. And if you actually look at the link, which is up here somewhere on the top right hand side, you should be able to see through to Dennis Tyson's build on a Minimax, and on that video it actually shows the type of hinges which he's utilising on that aircraft, which are substantially larger in pin diameter than these are, and that's what they've called for the Minimax. In accordance with my old training notes on hinges, for a peened hinge, the pin going through should be shorter than the overall hinge length by 2 to 3 times the diameter of the thickness of the pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the pin off slightly short. In this case the pin's only just over 2mm in diameter, and I will grind the ends. So as you can see, pin flush at that end. At this end it's shorter, and what we're just going to do now is I'm just going to use the sander here. I've got to round the edges again. in my manual it says that this should be a smooth end, no burrs and not sharp in any format. So let's have a little look and see if we can, how we get on with that. So there's a fine abrasive on here. This one is 400 grit, and so we've now got a smooth finish on each end, almost polished one might say. So the peening process, we're just going to tap this at 45 degrees, and the idea is we're just going to squash down at the very end, just slightly, so that the hole is about half the diameter. Hope if I actually had it tight in the vise. And that's spot on. Now the position that it's peened should be half the arc that the hinge is expected to go through. So our hinge is going in the sort of straight ahead position, so it's going to be arcing in either direction, so it should be at that half arc position. The pin should now slot through. Put this one in. Just going to make sure that is up, which it is, and now with it tight, there we go. And now that hinge, easy moving, still peened, and there's no way that that pin should come out. The reason for the end of the pin having to be smooth is because of the movement backwards and forwards. If it was a sharp edge and things like that, it would eat its way through the peen, and it works really well peening for an aluminium style hinge like this. This is for the small bore. In my notes where it says you've got a pin diameter greater than 1/8 of an inch, then what you do is you actually put a notch in the side of the pin, and you'd use a rounded punch and punch into the side to hold the pin in place. Harder to get that accurately sorted out, but for this size, absolutely perfect this way. So a little bit more work to do, but let's just compare the weights between this and the stainless steel hinge. Okay, so here's my scale, zeroed. Now please bear in mind that both these hinges have similar strength properties within their operation, and in the one of the technical manuals I looked at, they say that they're pretty much interchangeable. So here we go. This one reading there is 30.07 grams. Let's call it 30 grams. Bear in mind, when I actually fit them, I will be sort of taking corners off the actual hinges themselves as well. So there'll be some further lightening. And this one here is 17.07, so call it 17. So we're talking about nearly a 50% weight saving between the two hinges. So quick battery failure. So conclusion really, the difference between the two there is going to give us a weight saving of about 3.5 ounces total weight at the back end. Not significant, but things which I should point out, this is aircraft grade aluminium hinge, not just something you find on eBay. I don't know if you can read the numbers on there, but this is an aircraft grade hinge, so I wouldn't substitute this stainless steel for just any old alloy hinges. Definitely make sure you're using the correct stuff. It's really down to personal choice whether you want to go for the stainless steel rolled or the extruded aluminium. Like everything, it's down to a personal factor and what you believe is best for you. For me, I'm going for this. Part of the primary reason for that is the long 6-inch long hinge which goes along the elevator center section. I didn't have sent to me, and I wanted to get this this little bit sorted out, so I had this hinge. That's what I'm going to go and use. And the hinges and that will be checked every 50-hour flight maintenance anyway to ensure that they are good. Little bits of some extra hints and tips I should add in here. Do not mark aluminium hinges with a pencil for your measurements, as the carbon in a pencil and the graphite is corrosive to aluminium. It's higher up the electric scale than aluminium is, so it will cause a galvanic corrosion, especially with the dampness which is always present within wood. That's one factor that you really ought to think about. Also, some of the black sort of felt tip pens, the permanent felt tip pens, black ones, contain quite a chunk of carbon. When I was in the Air Force, we were only ever supposed to use green or blue for doing marking, unless we were doing scribe marks. So it's down to that sort of corrosion factor. And the other thing which I would say with either set of hinges, it's very tempting to start adding oil thinking you're doing a good job lubricating things by adding oil. With most of these type hinges, whether it's a rolled hinge or aluminium, a piano hinge style hinge, it's best not to lubricate, because the lubrication tends to hold dust and you end up with them wearing a lot faster. In point of fact, it's supposed to be about a 50% faster wear rate with lubrication, especially with the aluminium type. Corrosion can form in here, but as it moves, that dust will fall out. If you have oil in here, you hold all the dust in and it acts as a cutting compound and wears out the hinge, and you end up with horrible black streaks all over your aircraft. With the steel type hinges, similar sort of things can happen. You don't get the corrosion so much with lubrication being present, but you do get that real grit happening, and especially on a rolled hinge, hence the problem. And they say the recommendation in the old Air Force handbooks was not to lubricate piano hinges at all. So there's just a couple of little pointers which a lot of people tend not to think about and tend to go in and start lubricating, because that's what we're used to doing, or we think it's a good thing to do, and we're helping things out. They shouldn't be tight, so there shouldn't be any binding, so lubrication isn't going to help you out much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.